is you should able to
Prayer.
respect.
सोई नहीं जगी है.
Okay. So vagus nerve, which is a 10th cranial nerve, it is a mixed nerve. We know when we say the mixed nerve, it is both motor and the sensory component. But if you see here, predominantly the motor component. So motor component is large as compared to the sensory component, and this nerve which is called a vagrant or wandering nerve. Why it is called so? If you see the vagus nerve compared to the other cranial nerve, if you see the vagus nerve, it has a huge course and it is supplying the different parts, different organs of the body. If you see, it is in the head region, the neck region, which is supplying the muscles of the pharynx, larynx, in the thoracic region, the heart, the lungs. Then we go downwards in the abdominal part. It is supplying the esophagus, the stomach, up to the transverse colon. That is the right 2/3 and left 1/3 of the transverse. That is parts of the midgut and the foregut, they are supplied. So it has a huge course. If you see it, that's why it is called as a wandering nerve. Now if you look at this diagram, you can able to trace the nerve from its origin towards the, as it is going to the head, neck, the thorax, and the reaching toward the abdomen. Okay, so that's the course of the vagus nerve. That details we are going to see what is the course in the neck region, thoracic region, and the abdominal region, and what are the branches which are given here. Okay, so if you see, it is a chief pathway of the cranial part of the parasympathetic system. Okay, so it is supplying the GI part, is a bronchomotor to the muscles. Okay, secretomotor fibers are there to the glands, and it supplies the derivatives of the foregut and the midgut, as well as it supplies the heart. So if you know the what are the derivatives of the foregut and the midgut, then it becomes easy to remember the nerve supply. Okay, what are the functional components and the nucleus? Already you have seen, just to have a review. Okay, if you look at this diagram, already you have studied at the medulla oblongata. You can see there is a nucleus ambiguous, and if you know the nucleus ambiguous, it is a ambiguous nucleus which gives origin to the muscles which are supplied as a spatial visceral fibers, spatial visceral uh, efferent fibers. Okay, dorsal nucleus of vagus, nucleus tractus solitary, again it is a spatial visceral afferent fibers are there. Spinal nucleus of trigeminal, it is general somatic afferent fibers. So these, the fibers, the cell bodies which will be located in these nuclei. Okay, and the fibers, the axons which are coming, or the axons which are relaying, the sensory fibers coming from the periphery towards the center, will relay into this nucleus. Okay, these fibers together, it will form a vagus nerve. Now if you see the vagus nerve, all these, it is a mixed nerve, all these components are present. Okay, okay, if you see now here, the spatial visceral efferent, I said it is a nucleus ambiguous which are supplying the bronchiomotor fibers, branchial apparatus muscles that are arising from. General visceral efferent fiber, these are going to the coming from the dorsal nucleus of vagus, and spatial visceral afferent from the nucleus tractus solitarius. So as I said, the muscles which are from the branchial apparatus, that is muscles of the palate, pharynx, and the larynx. We are the nerves which are coming from the spatial visceral efferent, that is nucleus ambiguous. While these coming from the dorsal nucleus of vagus, these parasympathetic fibers which are innervating the heart, the bronchial tree, and the most of the GI part, that is we have seen up to the transverse colon. The spatial visceral afferent, it is a test fibers, gustatory fibers which are carried by this nerve from the posteriormost aspect of the tongue. Okay, and this is from coming from the relaying into the nucleus tractus solitarius. The next component, it is a general visceral afferent nucleus. So some book it is given only in the dorsal nucleus of the vagus. Some book they have mentioned some of the fiber they relay into the nucleus tractus solitarius also. Okay, so if you see, this carries the general sensation. Okay, that is the dorsal nucleus of vagus afferent fibers. This carries general sensation from the mucous membrane of the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, esophagus. Okay, as well as the abdominal organs. The general somatic afferent fibers, okay, these are nothing but the nucleus of spinal tract of trigeminal nerve. So this will relay into the nucleus of, we will carry from the auricle, we'll see the area, and it will relay into the nucleus of spinal tract of trigeminal nerve, which carry general sensation from the auricle, and it will terminate into the this nucleus. Okay. So there already we have seen the functional components. So when we write the functional component, you should be able to write in the all the different components here. Likewise, the vagus nerve. Now we'll go into describe in three parts like cervical, thoracic, and abdominal. That will become easy for us, okay, to describe. If you see now, there's a diagrammatic representation which is given here. You can see there, starting from the nerve which is coming from the jugular foramina, okay, as it comes out in the jugular foramen, it forms one ganglion, that is a superior cervical ganglion. Just as it comes out through the jugular foramina, it forms the inferior cervical ganglion. Okay, now see there are the branches which are giving the neck. It passes through the neck, it goes into the, now if you see the neck, there are the laryngeal muscle, the pharynx muscles. It is supplying the carotid body, carotid sinus. Then it is going to the
छोटा
thorax,
कैसे
where it is supplying
दिन
the
भर
lung.
मोबाइल देखो बेटा छोटा हाथ मान पापा आएगा तो शाम का पीछे भाग पुक करना चालू करते हैं उन्हें
Sorry. Okay, then it is in the abdominal part. So we'll describe first of all the course, and then we'll describe the branches. Okay. Now in the course and relation in the head, okay, and as well as just for the fun. Already you know this diagram now. Now if you see this 10th cranial now, that is the vagus now, it is arriving from the posterolateral sulcus between the anteriorly there is olive and posteriorly inferior cerebral peduncle. There are rootlets. Okay, these rootlets as they go laterally, they will join to form a trunk, and that will come to the medial part of the jugular foramina. Okay, so if you see it is forming this rootlet, they join together, they come out, and you can see there is a superior ganglion and inferior cervical ganglion, okay, just coming out to the foramen, and there is green structure which is showing the general somatic afferent fibers which is going to the auricles here. And now this, as it leaves the cranial cavity through the foramina, that is the jugular foramina, okay, it, when it is coming out, it is enclosed in a common sheath, okay, a dural sheath along with the cranial nerve, because the cranial nerve, if you see, it has got relation with vagus nerve, because of some of the fibers, the cranial part, they are going to pass with the vagus nerve, that we'll see here. Now the ganglion, we'll see a little bit about the ganglion. That superior ganglion, as I said, it in the jugular foramina, within the jugular foramina, and mainly having the fibers, cell bodies mainly. It is a general somatic afferent. If you see in this diagram, a schematic diagram, very nicely, a simple diagram which explains you the nerve supply also here and the relation. The inferior, also called nodus ganglion, lies just below the foramen, and it considers the cell bodies of the visceral afferent fibers. Okay. One more thing, as we go down, okay, this just below this trunk, it gives a pharyngeal branch, that is a, and this pharyngeal branch of the vagus nerve, it is joined by the cranial root of accessory nerve. Just underline this. The cranial root of accessory nerve will join the trunk of the vagus nerve just below the inferior ganglion. Okay, as we go for the nerve supply, we'll come to know the importance of this. Okay. Okay. So what happens? So all the fibers, that is the cranial root of accessory nerve, okay, they'll distribute to the vagus nerve. Okay. Now what happens now here? After the superior ganglion, then inferior ganglion, cervical ganglion. Okay, the nerve, it will run vertically downwards. And as you have studied in the carotid canal, this carotid triangle, Okay, you have seen the carotid seal. Okay, the carotid seal is nothing but the modification of the deep fish of the neck, which is surrounding the internal carotid artery and the internal jugular vein, along with which there is a content that is a vagus nerve. Okay, so this vagus nerve, it lies between the internal jugular vein, which is laterally, vein is laterally, and the artery, that is internal carotid artery, is medially. And this when you press it downwards at the lower part of the neck, okay, it is the lateral, it is remains the same, that is the internally jugular vein, and the to the medially it is the common carotid artery. So simple words, the common carotid artery, it will divide into the internal jugular and the external jugular, while the internal jugular, it will remain same from above downwards. So relation quite different, okay, in the upper part of the neck and the lower part of the neck. Now coming to the, this was in the neck. Okay, in the, if you know, brief, this was in the neck. We have seen the ganglion, we have seen the superior cervical ganglion, inferior cervical ganglion, we have seen in the carotid sheath. Okay, now how it enters the thorax. Okay, so it is quite a different course on the right and left side. So if you see this diagram, you can easily make out, if you see this on the right side, it is crossing the right subclavian artery. On the left side, if you see, it is in between the left common carotid and the left subclavian. So that's the relation. Okay, I am talking about the vagus nerve. Okay, there are different relation of the branch, that is a recurrent laryngeal, that you also will see, which has got embryological importance also. So right vagus nerve, it enters the thorax by crossing in front of the right subclavian artery, while the left vagus, it enters between the left common carotid and the left subclavian artery. So this is a simple thing I have mentioned here to remember how it enters the thorax. Little bit will go in the detail in the coming slide. Okay, now coming to the right vagus. Very easy to remember as we go downwards, and very easy to remember the branches. We know the course now. We are enter the thorax. Now, as we know, to enter the, on the right side, if we cross the right subclavian artery, just posterior to the superior vena cava. Now, one thing you remember, it is going to form the plexus now. Okay, so it will form the cardiac plexus. It will form the plexus at the root of the lung. It will form the plexus at the esophagus. So esophageal plexus. So remember these three things, okay, which are going to help us. Now it will descend posterior to the right bronchus or right root of the lung, okay, and it is going to form the cardiac plexus, the pulmonary plexus. The cardiac plexus is going to supply the heart. Muskan, your mic is unmute. Please mute your mic. So, okay. So as it descend down, it is going to form the plexus. So what plexus? At the root of the lung, okay, it is formed from the pulmonary plexus. Above that, it is going from the cardiac plexus, and at the lower part of the esophagus, it is going to form the esophageal plexus. Okay, that's the course. At the lower part of the esophagus, as I said, it is going to form the esophageal plexus, and in turn, it is going to form a common trunk, which is called as a posterior vagal trunk. Remember, right vagus nerve, which is forming the esophageal plexus, is going to assemble and form the posterior vagal trunk. If you remember the abdomen, the nerve supply of the stomach, then you will know what is the posterior vagal trunk. Okay, and after forming the posterior vagal trunk, it is going to enter the abdomen through the esophageal opening of the diaphragm. Okay, so that's the course we have seen on the right side. Same on the left side. We'll see. So, okay, one more thing I want to add here, the right vagus nerve, it gives the right recurrent laryngeal nerve, and that is going to hook around the right subclavian artery. Remember this point. And after forming this recurrent laryngeal nerve, it is going upwards in between the trachea and the esophagus to supply the muscles of the larynx and the lower part of the larynx. Left vagus nerve, as I said, in between the left common carotid and left subclavian artery, okay, just descend on the arch of the aorta. Further again, like right vagus, it is going to form the cardiac plexus, pulmonary plexus, and the esophageal plexus. One more point remember here, now it will enter the abdomen. How? Likewise, the right vagus nerve, it forms the posterior vagal trunk. It is going to form the anterior vagal trunk. One of the MCQs may be asked for you, anterior vagal trunk is formed by left vagus, right vagus. Okay, there will be choice in different way also. So you should remember this, the anterior vagal trunk, which is formed by the esophageal plexus, which is formed by the left vagus nerve. So left vagus nerve, it will give rise to the anterior vagal trunk, which will pass through the esophageal opening of the diaphragm. Okay. So we have reached from the neck region to the thorax, and we have entered through forming by the anterior vagal trunk and the posterior vagal trunk into the abdomen. Okay. Okay. Just before going, we have to know the relation of the recurrent laryngeal, left recurrent laryngeal. As we know, the right recurrent laryngeal nerve, it is going to wind around the right subclavian artery. But here, if you remember, now here you should know the embryology part, that you read it. I'm not going to explain here, but go and read, because frequently this question, it is asked in the exams, in the viva also, in the theory, you should know. So this left recurrent laryngeal nerve, it hooks around the aortic arch. Okay, just left to the ligamentum arteriosum. You know what is ligamentum arteriosum, and it will then again it will have a same course at that of the left right recurrent laryngeal, that it is into the trachea and the esophagus. Okay, so these are the 2 points you should remember. Coming to the abdomen. Okay, now abdomen, likewise, if you see the course, when I am describing the course, definitely again the branches are coming here. So in the abdominal part, I'll describe the course along with the branches. So that part will finish here, and that will refresh your knowledge regarding the nerve supply of the stomach also here. Okay, in detail I'll see that part also. Okay. So it will divide into 2 branches, that is hepatic. Now I am talking about the left vagus, which is forming the anterior vagal trunk. Okay, and the gastric branch. So here you can see the yellow color, these are left vagus, while there are purple color, that is the right vagus. Now see it properly, the diagram. See the left vagus, it is giving the hepatic branch, okay, which is further giving the pyloric branches. If you see the gastric branch, here it is written in the diagram, anterior nerve of lethargy. Okay, now I'll explain you here. The hepatic branch, okay, it will go laterally, it will form the ascending branches, which is going to supply the above the liver and the biliary apparatus, and descending branch, which is shown here, it is going to the pylorus. It is also called as a pyloric branch, and which is supplying the pre-pyloric part of the stomach. Very important, the pyloric sphincter here. When we are doing the vagotomy, we are not cutting this nerve, we are just going to save the function of the pyloric sphincter. Okay, so it is supplied by the pyloric branch, which is coming from the hepatic branch of the vagus nerve, and also it is supplying the first part of the duodenum. So it is going to have a hepatic branch, ascending branch, descending branch. Descending was very important, it is supplying the pre-pyloric part of the stomach, pyloric sphincter, and the proximal part of the duodenum. Likewise, the gastric branches, the main, if you see the gastric branch, it is called as the anterior nerve of lethargy, and it is supplying giving by the branches, that is the anterolateral surface of the stomach. Okay, so anterolateral most of the surface, it is supplied by the anterior nerve of the lethargy. In the treatment of peptic ulcer, this trunk has been, we do the vagotomy, in which we cut this anterior nerve of lethargy. Okay, we preserve this nerve, that is a pyloric branch of the vagus nerve, just to refresh your knowledge. Okay, so it will supply the anterolateral surface of the stomach, that is the gastric branches. Right vagal, which is formed by the posterior vagal, which forms the posterior vagal trunk. Now it will give the gastric branches and the celiac branch. What is the gastric branches? It is a running on the lesser curvature, I've written a greater, it is a lesser curvature, make correction, and it is called as a nerve of lethargy. Okay, and it is going to supply the posterolateral surface of the stomach, the celiac branches. Okay, it will accompany the left gastric artery, and it is going to form the uh, celiac plexus. Okay, yes, see this diagram. Okay, and it is going to supply from the celiac plexus, it is going to supply the organs via the perivascular cord, proximal 2/3 and left 1/3 of the transverse column. So all these part is going to supply through the celiac plexus. Okay, so I have covered both the relation course along with the branches of the vagus nerve in the abdominal part. For us, okay, we are dealing with the head neck, so you should know in detail about the nerves, what are the branches which are giving the head neck. Okay, okay, the superior, from the superior ganglia there are some branches arising from the inferior ganglia, and there are branches which are arising from the trunk. In this way you can remember the branches. The superior ganglia, it is mainly, if you see the nerve, that is cell body, it is a general somatic appearance. So it is a auricular nerve and the meningeal nerve. So auricular nerve, it is going to supply the auricle, which part we'll see in the coming slide, and the meningeal nerve, it is going to supply the dura of the posterior canal fossa. The inferior ganglion, it is a pharyngeal branch, carotid branch, and the superior laryngeal nerve. Okay, you should able to enumerate these branches whenever asked. Okay, from the trunk, it is going to form give the cardiac branches and the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Okay, that's the right hand lip. Okay, so these are the branches which are given in the neck. Now a little bit we'll see the what is the course of this and which part they supply. Okay, meningeal branches, okay, it is going to supply the dura mater of the posterior canal fossa. Auricular branch, remember, concha and the root of the auricle, posterior half of the external auditory meatus, and outer surface of the tympanic. So tympanic, remember, the outer surface, external auditory meatus, that will be the posterior half, and the concha of the auricle. So these all it is going to supplied by the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. Pharyngeal branches, very important. The pharyngeal plexus, is it contribute in the formation of the pharyngeal plexus? The muscles of the pharynx and the soft palate, it is supplied to the pharyngeal plexus except tensor veli palatii. What is this pharyngeal plexus? These are the plexus which are formed by the nerves, motor and the sensory nerve, which are coming from the vagus nerve, accessory cranial nerve, and the glossopharyngeal nerve. All these will form the pharyngeal plexus on the middle constrictor muscle of the pharynx, and they are going to supply these muscles. Okay, so it is going to supply the pharynx muscle, soft palate, except the tensor veli palatii, which is supplied by the mandibular nerve. Carotid, okay, this is going to supply the carotid body and the carotid sinus. So all these branches is in the simple diagram they are shown you can easily remember. Okay, superior laryngeal nerve, okay, it will give the external laryngeal and the internal laryngeal nerve. The external laryngeal nerve, it is going to supply the cricothyroid muscle. It is the only laryngeal muscle which is lying outside the larynx. Okay, and which is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve. Along with this, the external laryngeal nerve, it gives contribution to nerve supply to the inferior constrictor and the pharyngeal plexus. We contribute in the formation of pharyngeal plexus. Internal laryngeal nerve, it is going to supply the mucous membrane of the larynx up to the vocal cord. Okay. Recurrent laryngeal nerve, okay, it is coming from the below. As we seen, the tracheoesophageal go on the right side, it is going to wind on just around the right subclavian artery. On the left side is the arch of aorta, and it is going to supply all the intrinsic muscles of the larynx except cricothyroid, as I mentioned in the above. It is supplied by which? That is external laryngeal nerve. So all the muscles of the larynx are supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve except the cricothyroid, which is supplied by the external laryngeal nerve. Okay, a sensory contribution below the vocal cord. The cardiac branches, they contribute. So when we say the cardiac branches, okay, which are arising from the vagus nerve, it has the two sets, superior and inferior branches. Okay, so if you see the cardiac branches, they will join, all these cardiac branches, both superior and inferior branches, they will join to form the cardiac plexus. There is one exception, that is inferior cervical branches of the left vagus nerve, okay, which will form the superficial cardiac plexus. So if you see the deep cardiac plexus, it is formed by the vagus nerve, except the left vagus, the inferior cervical branch, it is going to form the superior cardiac plexus. When you are going to study the nerve supply of the heart, you will come to know the importance of this sentence. Okay. In the thorax, it will form the pulmonary and the cardiac branches. The pulmonary branches, it will supply the bronchial tree, the lungs, the blood vessels. So motor fibers are bronchoconstrictors, while the and the secretomotor fibers, they are for the bronchial glands. Okay. The sensory fibers, we have seen the motor fibers, the sensory fibers, they are related with the Ehrenberg's and the curve reflex. Cardiac branches, okay, they will form the join the deep cardiac plexus. Esophageal branches, okay, what is the function of this? As we see the esophageal, they form the esophageal plexus, posterior and anterovagal trunk. The function, when it will increase the peristalsis, it will stimulate the esophageal glands. Okay, that was about the branches in the thorax, the cardiac branches, the pulmonary branches, along with the functional aspect. The abdominal part, already we have seen the branches. We'll see the what is the functional aspect of these branches. Gastric branches, they are secretomotor to the glands. They are motor to the gastric musculature, and they are inhibitory to the pyloric sphincter. While the hepatic branches functions, it is not known properly. Celiac branches, it will supply the, as we know, if you see in the diagram also, it is supplying the small large intestine, and they act as the secretomotor to the glands, and they will help in the increasing of the peristalsis movement. Okay, so yes, now we have seen the vagus nerve. Just to have a look, we have seen the what are the functional component, that is we have seen the nuclei, how it is formed, we have seen the cores in the head, neck, thorax and the abdomen. Then we have seen the branches in the head, neck, thorax and the abdomen. Okay, now some clinical importance. It is also called as Alderman's nerve, that is a auricular branch of the vagus nerve. Why? The alderman in the ancient Roman days, they used to stimulate their appetite. So they used to put the cold water drop just behind the ear, or in the cotton in the ear. So it used to stimulate the appetizer by increasing the motility of the stomach. So that's why it is called as a Alderman's nerve phenomenon. If there is a lesion, what will happen? There will be the lesion to the vagus nerve. As we know, it is supplying the muscles of larynx, so it will going to affect the voice. So there will be a nasal regurgitation, then there will be nasal twang of the voice. There is hoarseness of the voice. There is fluttering of the palatal, that is flattening of the palatal arches will be there, and the position of the vocal cord, it will be the cadaveric position. There will be dysphagia and there will be loss of the cup reflex. Okay. How to test? Okay, just ask patient to open his mouth and ask him to say ah. Okay, and compare the palatal arches of the two sides. Okay, so if you see the soft palate, it will be in the midline. If you see the bilateral lesions, the soft palate, it will drop. Okay, so if you the unilateral lesion also, okay, there is a flattening, there is a dropping of the palatal arch will be there on the side of the paralysis, and ulva, it will be pulled to the normal side. Okay, so you can test clinically also the vagus nerve. Okay. Okay. So this was about the vagus nerve, what we are seeing, which was the huge nerve, the course, if you see the branches. Okay. we should know about. So details of this in the, if you see the details of the thoracic part, it will, if you already studied in the thorax, abdominal, you have studied in the abdomen. For details again, you have to read all these, the thoracic part of the vagus nerve and the abdominal part of the vagus nerve. Detail I have taken here of the neck region, okay, along with the much of the part I have got from the thorax as well as from the abdomen, okay. Coming to next, the accessory nerve, which is the 11th cranial nerve. It is purely motor, okay. It is supplying the muscles, okay. So it is having a two parts now here. Which are these two roots? It is a cranial and spinal root. Now, if you see this diagram, see there is a cranial root which is coming from the nucleus ambiguous, and if you see the spinal root, it is coming from the spinal nucleus of accessory nerve. If you remember, if you see the cranial root, it is arising from the nucleus ambiguous, and this cranial root of accessory nerve joins to the vagus nerve. The spinal root, it has an independent course and is generally regarded as a spinal accessory nerve. When we say the spinal accessory nerve, it is a spinal root. The cranial root, as I mentioned here, it is accessory to the vagus. Okay, so that all the cranial root, they are going to pass along with the, or will going to distribute the muscle to the vagus nerve. Coming to the functional component, it has a special visceral efferent coming from the nucleus ambiguous and general somatic efferent. It is going to supply the muscle, that is a trapezius muscle and the sternocleidomastoid muscle, which is a general somatic efferent, and muscles of the palate, pharynx and the larynx, okay, that will be supplied to the vagus nerve. So it will act as an accessory to the vagus nerve. So cranial part, it is having the spatial visceral efferent fibers from the nucleus ambiguous, and it will provide them motor fibers to the muscles of the soft palate, pharynx and the larynx. Okay, so general somatic efferent, which is a second functional component, it will provide the motor fibers to the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscle. Okay, yes, as I said, the spinal, this root, it arises from the spinal nucleus of the accessory in the ventral horn of the upper thigh spinal segment, upper thigh cervical spinal segment, I can say here. Okay, that will give rise to the spinal root of the accessory nerve, that is the 11th cranial. We see the course. Now the cranial root, it is, as I said, it is in alignment with the glossopharyngeal, vagus, and just below that there is a nerve, that is a cranial root of accessory nerve. Again, there are 5 to 6 rootlets, they will join, okay, and they will run laterally, and they will unite to form a single trunk which will reach to the jugular foramen, and at this point it will be joined by the spinal root. As we know, the spinal root, it is forming in the cervical region. It has to ascend up, it has to enter the cranial cavity, and again it is going to come out. So it is, if you see now here, yes, you can see here in this diagram, you can see the cranial root, it is going laterally joined by the cranial root. Okay, you can see the accessory root, okay, and it is entering to the jugular foramina along with the glossopharyngeal nerve and the vagus nerve. Okay, spinal root, as it arises, you can see, yes, from the lateral aspect of the upper thigh cervical spinal segment, okay, from ventral horn. So these are coming between the ventral and dorsal root of the spinal nerve, and they will join to form a single trunk which will enter into the cranial cavity through the foramina magnum. Okay. Okay, and it is lying just behind the fourth part of the vertebral artery. So once it enters the cranial cavity to the foramina magnum, Near it will join to the cranial root of accessory nerve to form a common trunk to enter the jugular foramina. Now, the spinal root, it will leave the skull through the jugular foramina. Okay, and after it fuses with the cranial root. Immediately after coming out, okay, these two roots, they are going to separate. These two roots are going to separate. Now you can see in the green, it is the spinal root. In the red, it is the cranial root. Okay, if you see in the jugular foramina, they are joined together. As they come out, they are going to separate it. Now if you see the cranial root of the accessory nerve, it is going to join with the vagus nerve. And the spinal root, it is going to run independently. Okay, now the cranial root, it is going to join the vagus nerve just below the inferior ganglion, and it is going to distribute to the branches of the vagus nerve, to the muscles of the pharynx, palate, pharynx, that is soft palate, pharynx, and the larynx. Okay, the spinal root of the accessory nerve, okay, it will, now it has to go, as we know, it is going to supply the trapezius muscle and the sternocleidomastoid muscle. It has to go downwards. Okay, it will going, as we have studied in the posterior triangle of the neck, we have seen there. Okay, so it has got relation with that. So it will go downward vertically between the internal jugular vein and the internal carotid. Okay, because now we have seen it will cross in front of the transverse process of the atlas vertebra and underneath the posterior belly of digastric and the occipital artery. It will cross above by the occipital artery, and it will pierce the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and it will supply that muscle, and it will enter into the posterior triangle of the neck. Okay, in the posterior triangle, what happens, it will run in the posterior triangle underneath the deep fascia, investing layer of the deep fascia, which forms the roof of the triangle. Okay, so underneath it will run, and it will leave the posterior triangle by passing deep to the trapezius muscle. So all this is shown in this diagram, the schematic diagram. Okay, so that's was about the course of the spinal root of the accessory nerve. Okay, cranial root, it is going along with the vagus nerve, that we see. Okay, this was about the, okay, one more thing you have to remember, the spinal accessory nerve, it is going to communicate with the that is C2, C3, and C4 of the spinal nerve. Okay, you can see here in the light blue color, C2, C3, and C4, they are going to join with the spinal accessory nerve, and these fibers, if you see, these are going to carry the proprioceptive fibers. These are the proprioceptive fibers for the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle. From the C2, C3, it will carry by through the sternocleidomastoid muscle, while the C3, C4, it will carry the proprioceptive fibers from the trapezius muscle. That point also you should remember, because this question we usually ask during the that is a clinical anatomy part, that is you have to demonstrate the action of the trapezius muscle, living anatomy we call it. There you should know the motor supply and the proprioceptive fibers also there, and how you are going to test this. No, that is the sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle. Okay, the cranial root of the accessory nerve via the vagus nerve, they are going to supply the pharyngeal, going to form the pharyngeal of the nerves. Spinal root, we'll see, already we have seen it. So pharyngeal plexus, through the pharyngeal plexus, it is going to supply the muscles of the palate, except tensor belli palati and tensor tympani, which is supplied by the mandibular nerve. All of you underline all these things, because when you come for the soft part also, we are going to ask this question. So in the single sentence answer is given, all muscles of the palate, that is the soft palate, are supplied by the accessory nerve through the pharyngeal plexus, except tensor belli palati and tensor tympani. All the muscles of the pharynx here through the pharyngeal plexus, except stylopharyngeus, is supplied by the glossopharyngeal. So all the muscles, okay, is supplied cranial root of accessory nerve through the via the vagus to the pharyngeal plexus. Okay, except the stylopharyngeus, which is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. and all the intrinsic muscle of the larynx actually is supplied by the vagus nerve. Sternocleidomastoid muscle, if you see spinal root of the accessory nerve, it will supply the sternocleidomastoid muscle and trapezius muscle. Okay, along with the proprioceptive fibers. So this is to summarize all the functional component, the cores and the branches which are supplied here. Now, what will happen if there is a injury to this nerve? Okay, it may be due to a stab injury at the region of the jugular foramen, or during the surgical removal of the cervical lymph node, the nerve may get damaged. So what are the lesions? So if it is a unilateral, there is ipsilateral paralysis of the sternocleidomastoid muscle, the spinal root. So patient is, if you know the action of the sternocleidomastoid muscle, then it is easy to have a clinical features. So he enabled to tilt his head on the ipsilateral side. Suppose the left nerve is injured, he is able to tilt his head on the left side and turn his head on the right side. Okay, so he is enabled to turn his face on the opposite side of the injury. Paralysis of the trapezius muscle, it is if you see, the patient is unable to shrug his shoulder. So how you are going to test all these now if there is lesion? So this is a coming slide we'll see. Just remember what is spasmodic torticollis. It is due to the irritation of the central lesion of the spinal accessory nerve, which will cause the clonic spasm of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Yeah, very important for you for living anatomy, how you are going to test the sternocleidomastoid muscle by asking the patient to turn his face to the opposite against the resistance. Suppose I want to test the right sternocleidomastoid muscle. Okay, just ask the put hand on the left hand and ask to force towards the left side. Okay, so in that way you can examine the sternocleidomastoid muscle. Okay. Trapezius muscle, simple, go behind the patient, stand, put both the hands on the shoulder and ask to shrug his shoulder. So that's the way you can test for the trapezius muscle. So in both cases we are tested for the spinal part of the accessory nerve. Okay, you should know these two muscles, how to test the sternocleidomastoid muscle, how to test the trapezius muscle, what is the nerve supply, what is the motor component, what is the sensory component, proprioceptive component. Okay, last nerve, the hypoglossal nerve. Why it is called hypoglossal? Just below the tongue and supplying the muscles of the tongue. So this is 12 cranial nerve. Again, it is a purely motor nerve. Functional component is general somatic efferent. So muscles arising from the occipital somatic myotomes. Okay, it is supplied by this nerve coming from the hypoglossal nucleus. We are seeing the lower part of the medulla. Okay, so hypoglossal nucleus, it is coming, if you see now, functional component we are seeing, and it is supplying all the muscles of the tongue which develops from the occipital myotome. Okay, so it is having the motor fibers, all the muscles of the tongue except one muscle, if you remember, recollect it, which is that muscle. Coming slide I will tell you. So all the muscles of tongue are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve except you see in the branches. So course and relation, as we know, it is arising from the in between the pyramid and the oleo. So anterolateral sulcus. So from the anterolateral sulcus, which is present in between the pyramid and the oleo, it is arising from the 10 to 15 rootlets. They will join together to form the trunk. Okay, and this rootlet, they join along with the first cervical rootlet of the cervical segment. Now what happens there? These roots of the rootlets of the hypoglossal nerve, they will run laterally and they are going to pass behind the vertebral artery. Now here I have shown the foramen also, which is called as a anterior condylar, which is also called as a hypoglossal canal. So it enters the hypoglossal canal, the rootlets just join, run laterally just behind the vertebral artery, and they will enter the hypoglossal canal and come out through the hypoglossal canal. What happens here? Now, once it come out, it has to reach to the tongue. So it will run downwards. Okay, downwards, and it is going to cross. When it is running downward, it is going to cross internal and external carotid arteries. If you see it in diagram, it is shown here. It is going to cross the internal and external carotid artery. Okay, before going to this, now you can see it is crossing internal carotid, external carotid, and one of the branch from the external carotid, it is lingual artery. The lingual artery, it is forming the loop, so it is also going to cross the loop. Okay, and if you go further again, the key muscle of the sub mandibular region, you can see here, it is a hypoglossal muscle. So hypoglossus muscle. So it will run superficial to the hypoglossus muscle. Okay. So it is crossing. It is runs vertically downwards. It crosses common internal carotid, external carotid, loop of lingual artery, and it is going to rest on the hypoglossus muscle. On the hypoglossus muscle, there is deep part of the submandibular gland. Okay, and there is a ganglia, submandibular ganglion. Okay, and the lingual nerve. All these, it is going to have a relation with that. Okay. Now it goes up at the near the anterior border of the hypoglossus muscle, and it will form a terminal branches. Okay, and which is going to supply the muscles of the tongue. So this is a simple. One more thing in this diagram, just see in the diagram, you can see there is a blue part. Okay, you can see along with there is a C1, C2, C3. You can see C1 nerve, the cervical nerve, it is going along with the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, and it is going to form, there is a superior root of ansa cervicalis, and from the C2 and C3 loop, it is going to join to form the inferior root of ansa cervicalis. So descendus cervicalis, and this is called as a descendus hypoglossa because it is coming from the hypoglossal nerve C1 fibers, and it is forming a loop. It is called ansa cervicalis just on the carotid sheath. Because when we are going to see the nerve supply, you should know of this. Okay, so this is overall the course relation at the hypoglossal nerve, the nuclear component. What are the branches now? Very easy to remember the branches. The branches from the hypoglossal proper, and the branches from the hypoglossal nerve containing the C1 fibers. Okay, already we have seen. Now if you see the C1 fibers, they are running along with the hypoglossal nerve. And it is C1 fibers, they are along with the and they are leaving the hypoglossal nerve and going downward to form the descendens hypoglossi. C2 and C3, they are forming the descendens cervicalis, and the loop is called as ansa cervicalis. Just remember that. Ansa cervicalis, again, it is a short note for you. Now, what are the branches from the hypoglossal? All the muscles of the tongue, both the extrinsic as well as the intrinsic muscles of the tongue, they are supplied by the hypoglossal nerve, except palatoglossus, which is supplied by the cranial root of the accessory nerve via the pharyngeal. Underline this. Okay, you should know this. Now it will give the meningeal branch. Okay, which will supply the posterior cranial fossa, the dura of the coronal posterior cranial fossa. Now if you see the this meningeal branch, again it re-enters the cavity through the hypoglossal canal, and it will going to supply the posterior, that is dura mater of the posterior cranial fossa. Now we'll see the branch of hypoglossal nerve containing the C5 fibers. Now here we know it is going downwards. It is contributing the formation of ansa cervicalis. It is descendens hypoglossi, or it is also called a superior or upper root of the ansa cervicalis. Okay. So what are these branches? It is a nerve to the thyroid, and it is going to nerve to the gynoid muscle. These are not the muscles of the tongue, but it is supplied to the C1 nerve. Okay. So this descendens hypoglossi, it arises as a nerve crossing in front of the internal carotid, and it runs downwards to join the inferior root of ansa cervicalis at the level of cricoid cartilage to form the ansa cervicalis, which will give nerve to the thyroid and nerve to the gynoid. All these two muscles, they are supplied by the descendens hypoglossi. Is that clear? So through the C1 nerve. This also you should know about when the hypoglossal nerve, if the branches are asked. Okay, the last part we are coming here. Clinical correlation. Lesions have the hypoglossal nerve. Okay, in the lower motor neuron paralysis, the tongue muscle, okay, will be paralyzed on the affected side. How you are going to test? Ask the patient protrude his tongue. The tip of the tongue, it will deviate to the paralyzed side. Why? It is due to the unopposed action of the genioglossus muscle on the healthy side. Supranuclear, it is upper motor neuron. Here there will be wasting of the muscles is there due to the involvement of the corticonuclear fibers. Paralysis of the muscles is there. Okay, all the muscles of the tongue, fasciculation of the tongue on the affected side is there. Mucous membrane will show the winkling. If you see in this diagram, and this is due to the wasting of the muscles. Okay, now how you are going to test this? Okay, so there are different way. When you are testing the genioglossus, and you should know the genioglossus muscle. Genioglossus muscle of the both the side, okay, they will go forwards and medially, so that when both are acting, the tongue will be in the midline. Suppose the left side is paralyzed, the right will move forwards and medially, so that it will push the tongue on the left side. Okay, that's why if you see, that's why we see it will the tongue will deviate to the affected side. So the normal tongue, it lies in the midline as is shown in this person. If the hypoglossal nerve is affected on one side, that it will deviate to the site of lesion due to the unopposed action. It is written here of the normal genioglossus muscle, that you should remember. Okay, so you should be able to demonstrate these movements of the tongue, which are the muscles acting and how they are acting. Okay, so this was for today's. Okay, I think I have covered everything from the vagus nerve, clinical correlation, how to test it, along with the course and branches of the accessory nerve, hypoglossal nerve, how to test, what the clinical reports. Okay, thank you.